This is The Basketball Show with Shane the Hammer Heel. What they gonna say next?
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of The Basketball Show, brought to you by TCL Mobile, 2K and Bet with Joel. I'm Joe Healy. Hammer, you're stuck in isolation. It was me last week. This week COVID's got you.
COVID has well and truly got me and my family, so I'm in the COVID house down south, and but coming out the other side, Joe. So it's going to get us all at some stage, and just staying positive through it.
Exactly. Love the attitude. I'm glad it's not been too bad for you guys as well, and it's nice that you've got company to get you through it too. We have a big show. It's Klay Thompson's day. Kyrie Irving has been back in the NBA, and then you've got the emergence of somebody like a Josh Green who's gone back-to-back career highs over the last couple of days. How
good the young fella, 18 points in only 22 minutes as well, 8 from 10 from the field. So he's going to have a great future. It just takes time when you're young. They just make you stay at the end of the bench, and he's coming through nicely. But how good with Klay Thompson back?
Oh, it was so exciting. Awesome to see him out there, and a rather ominous warning to the rest of the league. You get the feeling, don't you?
It's going to take him some time, but when he comes good, you know he's going to have a 40-point game in the next month, I reckon.
No doubt. Well, let's get straight into it with our TCL starting five. Speaking of the NBA and good news stories, Kiefer Sykes was picked up by the Pacers on a 10-day contract, and he's had his contract now guaranteed for the rest of the season. Before we get into it, Hammer, here he is talking about the impact that it's had on him and his family, especially his mum.
Man, that makes me, I know she's probably going to cry because it's bringing tears to my eyes right now, man, everything that she did for us. Losing my dad, taking care of everybody. Like, man, she deserved this more than anybody. She deserved this more than anybody. Like, man, she took in 5 kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, taking care of my kids when I told her I want to play college basketball. Man, I can't wait to see her, man. I can't wait to see her when she come up here for this game.
She gonna be here tomorrow?
Yeah, man, I can't wait to see her, man. She deserved it, though. It's unbelievable, man. It's unbelievable. She deserved it, bro. Like, the sacrifice she made, man, we come from poverty. We had nothing, man. So all I wanted to do was take care of her. She took care of everybody, man. So it's just amazing, man. I can't wait to talk to her. I can't wait to see her and hug her, for real.
Hammer, such beautiful words there from Kiefer Sykes from southeast Melbourne, ended up in Indiana. His mum was at the game yesterday, as he mentioned. They had a big win over Utah. It is just so nice to see.
It's so much bigger than sport, isn't it? Because we, judge people on their performances on the court, don't always understand the backstories and their dreams and goals and passions, and how much it actually changes people's lives. And, he's got his opportunity now. He's going to take it with both hands. He's so tough and determined, and got that contracted for the rest of the season. And the thing for me is that with the right opportunity, he could find himself in the NBA for a long time, and well-deserved story.
Definitely. Only 28 years of age as well, and had a couple of good moments in that game against the Jazz. He soared at one point, and for the putback it was pretty impressive, and by all reports is taking on a really good leadership role within the team as well, so great to see. Moving on, Sandy Brondello has been picked up by New York Liberty in the WNBA. This is her 17th year coaching in the league. The longevity is pretty incredible. What do you make of the appointment?
Well, I think it's a great appointment. I think the fact that it sort of had to end at Phoenix is just a tribute to how long people are there. I think she was there 9 years, and people change, and sometimes they need a change of voice and everything else. The players do. Probably Sandy did as well. And going to New York's a pretty good fit because they're a young team, they're an exciting team. Love the fact that Sammy Wickham's there as well, Beck Allen as well. So they'll benefit from that, and she's got an opportunity to rebuild again and have future success.
Yeah, congratulations to Sandy on that appointment. Now, News Corp did a poll at the end of last year, Hammer, about all the best sporting moments of 2021. The Boomers bronze medal, from 85,000 votes, that was number one. That was pitted against Ash Barty winning Wimbledon, against the D's winning the AFL flag. That's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Well, I thought it was just me. I thought I was biased that to get a bronze. That was the case for the Boomers because it meant so much to, I think, all of us. But it just shows that people are following the Boomers and they've enjoyed the ride, and finally getting that medal, something special, and great opportunities. And just so good to know that the Australian public is right behind the Boomers, the guys that made themselves available and had that success.
Well, they definitely created a bit of a brotherhood because Matisse Thybulle was asked about it. To be fair, it was after a win over Jock Landale and the Spurs, but he said that all of the success he's seeing from the guys this season has been really fun to watch. He said it's obviously better when it's not against us, being Philly, but all in all, he's really excited to watch them and see them be successful over there. We talk about your Josh Greens, Josh Giddey as well. Jock Landale had another 10-point, 3 boards and 5 dimes today as well. How nice is it to see the culture continuing on from that Boomers camp from Tokyo and it's seeping its way into the NBA with those guys too?
Well, it's just different. I mean, when you go and play for Australia, the passion and the pride that everyone has and the sacrifices to be there, because they're there because they want to be there. And the culture that's, been handed down for years and years, and Joey and Gorge and Paddy and those guys, he's been able to get into that and he fit it perfectly. You don't have that in the NBA. It's, people are selfish. They're playing for contracts, the money. Am I going to sit out? How many points am I getting? How much court time am I getting? That's not the culture of the Boomers. And, that's why he's going to be the perfect player moving forward. And he was, so good when the Boomers came around.
Now, before we keep things moving, Dirk Nowitzki had his jersey number 41 put up in the rafters at Dallas. It was a pretty cool occasion to see it happen. He's such a legend of the game, 21 years with the franchise. Do you have a favourite Dirk moment, Hammer?
Not really, but I mean, Dirk sort of came into it in the late 90s, and, there was guys like Petrovic and Vlade and Tony Kukoc, Sabonis, Marshalinas, those guys that were there in the 90s. He was that next person for me that came in and changed the way, the NBA and Americans saw Europeans. And for him to be there 21 years, have that success, to be able to dominate, the loyalty, but to get a title, fantastic career. And it's about time they bloody did that.
Definitely. It's quite nice to see Luka Doncic there as well, following in his footsteps. It was quite nice. Jason Kidd sort of said because all these 10-day contracts are being thrown out, he said, Dirk, do you want to come back and play? He said, absolutely not. Not a chance. Yes, thanks to 2K. We are going in depth now with NBL Commissioner Jeremy Loeliger, who joins us from Melbourne. Jeremy, thank you so much for being on the basketball show with us. Now, we know the season has been interrupted by COVID, just one game this past round. Am I right in saying, though, that we're pretty much through the worst of it now?
Oh, goodness, I certainly hope so. I mean, the situation is, with the Prime Minister making an announcement a couple of weeks back now about the changes to the definition of close contact, or essentially abolishing the concept of a close contact, in addition to the fact that a really significant proportion of our players and support staff have now had COVID and therefore are less likely to be removed from availability further into the season and for the next 6 months, which covers the rest of the season, then yeah, I'm hoping that those two things combine to mean that we are through the worst of it. But of course, who knows what COVID is going to throw at us next? It's thrown us every curveball in the book so far over the last couple of seasons, but we've dealt with it until now. We'll deal with it after now, and hopefully a lot more live basketball to come in the very near future, though.
Oh, I'm a bit confused. Is this Jeremy Loeliger or the great Vlade Divac on screen? But Jeremy, the challenges that we don't know about. As fans, we all think that we can just get a schedule going and you should be doing this, you should be doing that. What are some of the challenges that fans probably don't know?
Oh, look, I think one of the really concerning ones for us that people don't really take into consideration is venue availability. You've got so many different competitions and not just sport, but all kinds of major events who have had to shift their dates from earlier in the year, and I'm going back to sort of winter of 2021, all had to shift their dates back to the beginning of 2022. And we're not a football league. We don't play in arenas or stadiums rather. We play in arenas that are competing with rock and roll acts, that are competing with conventions. We're only one of many tenants at these venues, many different tenants at these venues, and the stark reality is that we're not necessarily the most lucrative for the venue owners either. So it's an arm wrestle to make sure that when we are able to play games in terms of player availability, that the venues are actually there for us to be able to do so.
You mentioned that a significant number of players and staff have had COVID. Do you know roughly what that percentage is?
Across the competition, I would say it would be nearing 50, maybe 60%. But of course, that varies greatly from team to team. Some teams have been more affected by it earlier. And so we're still going to have some bumps, we know that, but I think most teams now will have sufficient depth of talent available to them week to week to be able to see out, fingers crossed, the rest of the season.
We're hearing that Tassie, a lot of those guys are still in isolation until sort of Wednesday, Thursday this week. Then they've got 2 games scheduled for this round. How concerning is that for the league? Have they mentioned any sort of a hardship, or are they happy to just go ahead and play those games given the schedule at the moment?
Yeah, it's a very good question. We speak with every club every day, essentially, in terms of player availability now, because there are a couple of different things to take into account. The first is the application of COVID protocols to players and whether or not they're available for selection or whether or not they've got to remain under quarantine. But the second is whether or not they're feeling up to actually playing. So they may be released from COVID protocols, but still not ready to play pursuant to the advice of their team doctor or physio. So it's a day-by-day proposition. We are aware of the fact that there's a number of guys down in Tasmania who have it currently, and we're yet to see whether or not they're going to be okay to actually play. And then the next question is, well, can they sign replacement players on short notice? There will already be some replacement players under contract to step into the void, but it all comes down to how many players are fit and whether or not they can make up not a full roster, but a close to full roster. We have a policy that says that there is a threshold below which we will consider postponing the game, but if they have sufficient players, then they'll be expected to play the scheduled games.
Obviously, with quite a few games having been postponed at this stage, financially, what is the implication for that on the league and on the clubs as well?
Yeah, it's pretty dire. But for the moment, all we're doing is postponing games. And so as long as we're not cancelling games, then hopefully the revenues associated with those games are going to be realised. It will just be later than perhaps we'd first anticipated. That obviously is absolutely critical to our clubs, who are very, very much dependent on ticketing revenue. So playing those games in front of fans is of critical importance to the league and even more so to our clubs, and really importantly to our fans. We want to play as many games in front of those home crowds as possible. But it's certainly taking a toll financially, particularly as we're having to relocate teams. Of course, both Perth and the New Zealand Breakers are spending extended periods away from their home camps, and that's not a small amount in terms of travel, accommodation and everything else that we do to try and ensure that the players and their support staff are as comfortable as possible.
Is there any compensation provided to those teams or all of the clubs?
There will be... Well, certainly the NBL meets all of the costs associated with being out of their hometown. So if you are relocated, that falls to the NBL to cover. So teams shouldn't be left out of pocket as a result of not being at home. From an expense point of view, the question around compensation is usually from a loss of revenue point of view for not being able to play in front of your home fans. There was certainly compensation paid last year. I think all clubs received a share of that compensation, and there is still some funding in our war chest for compensation for this season also.
Well, it was nice to have the game last night. We look forward to more action this weekend, of course. We lost Hammer, obviously, halfway through that interview, Jeremy, but we'll get him back and we'll be watching on with interest for the rest of the season. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll speak soon. Thanks
very much, Joe. Pleasure to be here.
Breaking all the big news in basketball with Matt Logue.
Good to see you, Maddie, for the Logue Down. Now, I'm excited for this segment. You've got some news on the GOAT, Lauren Jackson. What can you tell us?
Yeah, guys, potentially big news. So Lauren has been back training for a long time now. She is fit as a fiddle. She looks really good, and she is telling people close to her that she potentially wants to make a comeback, which would be a massive story, as you mentioned, Joe. She is the GOAT, no doubt, in the world. Her cannabis trial, which has been well publicised, is going really well. So she's pain-free. But I think, Shane, you've got something to add to this story. My understanding is you got maybe potentially some contact from Lauren earlier this year.
Oh, well, not directly, but through mutual friends, I was certainly well aware that she's been back in practice for the last month. And I think any coach would, their ears would spark up a little bit when the great Lauren Jackson is back in training and trying to make a comeback. So we'll see how that training goes for her and wish her all the best, because what an injection for WNBL and women's basketball if Lauren found a way to be able to get back on the court for the WNBL and even the Opens.
Oh, it's the kind of news story that would raise eyebrows. It's a lovely sentiment to want to play in front of your kids as well. I'd be lining up for those tickets as if you wouldn't want one more chance just to see her out there again. It would be pretty incredible. Keeping things moving, Maddie, the Phoenix have locked in their import.
Yeah, they're going to lock in their import. They'll announce it on Tuesday. Brendan Ashley, 27-year-old power forward, Arizona. He went to college. He was All-American. He was drafted in 2015. Actually, he was undrafted the same year that Kiefer Sykes was undrafted. And he's played in Cyprus and Germany. He played with the New Zealand Breakers in 2019, guys. Actually played 27 games. And most recently, he's been in Italy. And the Phoenix came knocking, and he said, look, I've always loved how the Phoenix play, their style, and I'm keen. The Phoenix are confident. They think he'll perfectly complement Big Joe Chi, and he's athletic. He's a good defender. So it's a good move for the Phoenix. They've just got to get back on the court now, guys.
What sort of form did he have when he played for the Breakers, mate?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I think he averaged, 10 points, 6 rebounds a game. So it wasn't too bad. But since then, he's played for the G League Ignite the year before Dyson Daniels arrived. And as I said, he's played in Italy. So he's gone away and developed his game. The Phoenix believe that he's better than he was last time he was in the NBL. So I think it's a strong signing. They've also got Steve Taylor, who Mitch Creek did an Instagram story about the other day. He's a Chicago-born power forward, and he's been out here on a bit of a train and trial. My understanding is the Phoenix will keep him, and he may be used as a replacement player depending on COVID. So a few options there for the Phoenix. As I said, they just haven't played for ages. They need to get back.
Yeah, they'll be itching. Sorry, go on, Hammer.
Well, we haven't seen a worse time to be able to try and recruit. So, if he's only an average player, any of these guys coming into Phoenix, you understand it. I know from the WNBL perspective, I do not have one player after 3 weeks that I can actually get put forward and watch vision of. So difficult time to recruit for all the teams around the world.
A certain LJ who might be putting her hand up, Hammer. Watch this space. You never know. Now, Maddie, the Boomers team for the World Cup qualifiers, we initially thought that would be made up of NBL players, but you've got an update. It won't be, it seems.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens. So the NBL had a meeting and Basketball Australia via Zoom last week, and the NBL said, look, to the clubs, the NBL clubs, you've got to play ball here. We know the season won't be pausing. You've at least got to put, one player up. My understanding is from Basketball Australia's standpoint that this probably won't happen. They're expecting probably a younger team and a lot of NBL players that may not play. So it's a watch this space, but it'll certainly put Rob Beveridge in an interesting position. It won't be the Boomers' best team, no doubt.
Hey, let's just say, guys, that there'll be players that always had dreams of playing for Australia that didn't think it was going to happen anytime soon. That will be sliding on their number, that's for sure.
Well, it's a great opportunity for some of these young guys, someone like a Dyson Daniels, who you mentioned before, who will be a member of that Boomer squad moving forward in the future. But getting that first opportunity now, it can only be a good thing for them moving forward, really. Yeah,
absolutely, Joe. And I think, the likes of Delhi may not be there, but I think it's a great opportunity for Dyson. He's proven when he's played for Australia at the junior level that he's more than capable. and he's been good in the G League. So I'd like to see him in there and have a go. You know, you got Nick Kaye who's playing in the Japanese league, and the Japanese league will stop. So that's a great thing for the Boomers. You know, Angus Brandt potentially as well. So no, I think it'll still be a very strong side, and the depth of Australian basketball is strong. It's just the NBL season just has to come first, because you know this Omicron variant it just keeps continuing. So we've just got to just deal with it.
Who do you guys think you're going to play against to say this is going to be a strong team?
What was that, Shane?
Who do you guys think they're playing against to say this is going to be a strong team? Because I agree with Dyson Daniels, because he's always going to be a Boomer. But when you're talking about guys at the end of an NBL bench, like who are they playing against? Do you think that this is going to be a strong team?
Well, they obviously got Japan, Chinese Taipei. Like, it's not going to be easy. They're going to be strong. They're going to be strong in their own right, but they've just got no choice, Shane. Like, I don't know. Like, that's what they do. I think that.
I get that. I'm just saying it's not going to be a strong team. Let's not sugarcoat it. It's going to be one of the weakest.
It's probably not going to be. It's probably not going to be our strongest team, but I still think the depth is there. I still think they'll be good enough to win those games.
They won't be. You think that Australia's going to beat a full-fledged Japanese team?
I think they can, yeah, absolutely. Depends who plays. As I said, there might be some NBL players, but the Delhi won't be there. A few others I don't think will be there, but I think they can do it. Yeah.
Time will tell. Those games next month. Looking forward to it. We'll have you fully up to date here on the Basketball Show in the lead up as that team is selected. Maddie, thank you so much for the lowdown. Stick with us. We're going to go crystal gazing next. Well, there was, of course, only one game last round. Shout out to Director Dave, though. He called the upset with the Breakers beating the Bullets. We have 7 games, hopefully, touch wood, this weekend, that everything goes to plan. Maddie, I'll start with you. Sydney against the Hawks on Thursday night. Who have you got?
Yeah, I can't wait for this one. I'm going to stick with the Hawks. I think they'll be too good, particularly at home. Jalen Adams does return to the Sydney Kings, though, and that is a huge boost. Potentially RJ Hunter. So, you know, but I still think the Hawks, they've got too much class, and I think they'll get the job done on the back of Tyler Harbour, and Duopere.
That is a big in for the Kings, but they are on the road. They're playing down in the Gong. Hammer, next up on Friday night, it's Tassie against the Breakers.
No, before we go to the next one, I'm going to ask, why are you and Matt so against the Kings? Like, why the Hawks got all class and the Kings won't win that game? Seriously.
Just stating facts, Shane.
For me, it's been the issues with injuries with the Kings. So I'd tip the Hawks on Thursday, but I think maybe the Kings come out of this weekend 1-1.
Yeah.
Well, I think for me, the Kings are going to continue to get better now with DJ Vasiljevic back, having lots of time to be able to train as well. Obviously, they've missed their imports, so hopefully they get both back. But that's a flip of the coin for me. But I'm just making note that you guys don't pick the Kings too often. Now, let's get down to Tassie. And now I know that Matt Walsh is on the coaching staff. I'm going for Tassie 2 in a row. Right advice. Dan Mir has been struggling. He's got the right help now, brought the right person in, and they get 2 in a row.
Fair enough. Brisbane against the Phoenix on Saturday. I think the Phoenix won't have played in 28, 29 days or something, which is just crazy. They'll definitely be fired up for it, but I think that Brisbane are probably due a win, especially after that loss to New Zealand. Nathan Sobey and Franks, I think, will fire. I can see that you're not happy with that. This week is going to be so telling, I tell you. But no, I do think that Brisbane will get up, and I think that their defence will just cause issues for the Phoenix, who will, as I said, be fired up but perhaps a little bit rusty at the same time. The next game on Saturday, Maddie, Cairns against United up in the far north.
Yeah, look, Cairns have been impressive at home. They're having a go, but United, even though they've been hit by COVID, I think they'll be way too good. It'll be closer than a few people think, though. I expect the Taipans to, as I said, to have a bit of a crack, but yeah, not United too class. Hammer,
are you going for the upset in that one as well?
Melbourne win that one by a lot.
The next game Sunday, the Hawks against Perth. This is a flip of the coin for me.
Well, it certainly is, just like the other Hawks game, I think. But I think the Hawks lose the first one. Let's not forget that they had COVID extended period off as well, and I think they'll be better for the run. I'm tipping them to bounce back against the Perth Wildcats and split their weekend. They'll be better with the more games that they play. And as we know, they're tough to beat down there, and they split the weekend.
Well, next up it's Sydney and New Zealand. As I said, I think the Kings will split this weekend. I think they'll be too strong for the Breakers. They were impressive. Yanni was great. He had a career-high 27 against the Bullets the other night. But I think the Kings, Jarrell is going to be too much in the paint for them, and their depth, especially with Adams back and hopefully RJ Hunter as well. I think the Kings get up in that one. And finally, Maddie, rounding out the weekend, Adelaide up against the Jack Jumpers.
Yeah, I've been really disappointed with Adelaide. I know they've had a lot of disruption with injuries and COVID, but really they're not up to the mark yet. And I think they're fighting for their season. I do expect them to win this one, though, against the Jack Jumpers. And I really want to see a little bit more from Mitch McCarron. I think he's their big signing on big dollars. And, he needs to steer them home here.
Hammer, who have you got in that one?
Yeah, I think Adelaide as well, and probably agree with most of what Matt said there.
Well, there's a first.
No, we regularly agree.
I'm messing. Alrighty, well, time will tell. 7 games hopefully this weekend. Can't wait to have a lot more action back out on court. Maddie, thank you so much. We'll chat to you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, it is time for Points Made, thanks to Bet with Joel, with Derek Rucker, and of course you, Hammer. Now, I want to ask you guys about the New Zealand Breakers. They had their upset win over the Brisbane Bullets last night. D-Ruck, you were courtside for this one. Can you explain what was going on? Because it seemed that the Breakers owner, Matt Walsh, was having quite a lot to do behind the scenes with some game day decisions and even some in-play decisions as well. Can you talk us through it?
Okay, Joe, I got a tip in the first quarter that Matt Walsh, the Breakers owner, seemed to be quite involved with the goings-on with respect to substitutions and just, like, as you said, in-game management. So because it was my first day back, I'm a bit nervous at the time. I'm checking out everything that's going on. I'm really trying to watch the game. So at that point, once I received the tip, I started watching closely to watch his interaction with the bench and the team and so forth. And I started noticing, especially with regards to Peyton Siva, there was a lot of eye contact between the two when Siva was on the bench. In fact, Siva actually turned around at one point, made eye contact with Matt Walsh, as in, like, are they going to get me in the game at any point? And then I was like, okay, there's something here. So I continued to watch throughout the course of the first half. I reported it. And it went from there. And I think Andrew Gaze was probably more alarmed and agitated and affected by what I reported than, in fact, I was, Shane.
Well, it does sound like it, D. I came in on the end of it, spoke to you this morning about it. And initially, from our conversation, you sounded like, as an American, looking back at the owner, that's probably not a bad thing that he's helping you get into the game. Is that what your take was initially?
It sort of was, Shane. Like, I understand where Steve is coming from. I think he feels personally he's turning a corner in terms of his performances. He's coming back from injury. And we obviously, here at the basketball show, we've been involved in this entanglement before with Matt Logue's reporting. And Matt Walsh was very adamant about his support of Peyton Siva. So once I saw this body language between the two, I really paid closer attention. But yes, I want the owner on my side, but I thought also it generates sort of an angst, a pressure that is very strange. And I think Siva showed that. He had a good game, but at times I felt he just pushed it a little bit upon re-entering the game, Shane.
I mean, there's no doubt it's dysfunctional. And Matt Walsh is a really passionate young owner coming to the league, and no doubt would be doing that because he wants to help and thinks that it's going to help the team, thinks he's going to help his player. I guess where it becomes dysfunctional is when you start putting your hat on of the coach, the fact of how are other players perceiving the coach if one of the players is making eye contact and being able to get back into the game through that way. It's dysfunctional, there's no doubt about it. I think when you look at some of the social media things of, Siva and Matt Walsh hanging out on New Year's, which is a normal thing for Americans. We'd be doing it if we're overseas as well, and with his kids, sort of creates little pockets of relationships, I think, that makes it a bit awkward, because how do you feel if you're the player coming out, that you've come out because the owner wants you out and somebody else in? I think it's difficult. It's not normal. I don't think it's coming from a bad place, but I think it makes it really, really difficult to create a culture that's not undermining.
Have either of you guys experienced anything like that yourselves with teammates or with owners and coaches?
I have not, Joe. And one of the things that Matt Walsh pointed out to me, Shane, is that they're understaffed right now. They're living away from home. So his approach now is like all hands in. Like, we've got to do whatever it takes to win games. And I understood that. So I'm probably a bit more compassionate. Now, look, if there's any phrase that any of us understand right now, it's peer review. So I did a little peer review study of my own last night, and I called several head coaches around the world and within Australia, and none were as compassionate as me. They found under no grounds is this acceptable. For me, it was like, perhaps, if you win the game, it justifies what he did during the game, because he did call for the right changes to be made. Siva did have an outstanding game. But look, by and large, most coaches feel like this is serious undermining and makes it difficult to be successful over the long haul.
If they're understaffed, my advice to him would be, if they really need help, he should sit on the bench as a second or third assistant if he wants to be able to have a say, and that's what they all agree to. I think, though, that when you're an owner sitting behind the bench and you've got some people looking at you and those strings being called, it's not good. As a coach's point of view, when I coached the Sydney Kings, we had a particular owner sit behind the bench, and when I subbed out Ben Madgen, I think from memory, played about 37 of the 40 minutes, started abusing me when he'd been on the Terps for most of the day. It's very frustrating from a coach's point of view, which is a little bit different in this situation, because it seems like this owner was trying to help, but dysfunctional for me.
All right.
Hey, Joe, can I ask you 1 second? One question real quick, because you're from a generation just below Shane and myself. And look, we acknowledge here on the show, we acknowledge the difference in generations. How do you feel about this?
I can see both sides of it. I think it's probably a more of an individual case by case, and if it works for the Breakers, they got the win, their first win of the season. Dan Shamir was clearly relieved afterwards, so maybe it is okay for them. I can fully understand where it wouldn't be okay either. From a player's point of view, it would probably piss me off a little bit if I was that person coming out. But if it works in that specific environment, then good luck to them, I suppose. Okay, we'll keep things moving. Guys, it's Klay Day. The hype around Klay Thompson returning, I was not expecting that. It blew my mind. We knew, last week he was sort of referring to 6 days. We knew the crowd would be up for it, but this was over the top. But my goodness, it was great to see him back out there, and he performed.
Shane, did you see the dunk?
I did see the dunk. How good was that?
I know. And, we've both had lower extremity injuries, and we know the difficulty when you're a perimeter player and what you need to be able to make those types of moves. And one of the things where you have the least amount of confidence is attacking the basket. And so from my point of view, if I'm a Golden State Warriors fan or somebody in the front office, I'm very pleased to see that he was aggressive, getting to the rim. And he threw it down on 3 of the Cavs. And, the move to free himself and then turn the corner and get on the rim, it all looked good to me, Shane.
It was just exciting seeing him back and see the excitement in his teammates. What about Steph when he had that dunk as well? I just love the camaraderie of this club and these people and these superstars to be able to make it happen. But, he's not going to find any sort of consistency for 10, 12, 15 games. You could see, one of the step backs, he shot an air ball. He was inconsistent from the – just normal that there's going to be rust that takes a period of time. We just got to get reps up against quality defences all the time. So they're going to be in good shape. They're going to be hard to beat, and I just love seeing the superstar back.
It's an ominous sign. He had 17 points in 20 minutes. Their defence was good as well. I think they kept the Cavs to 82 points. But it was quite nice seeing some of the other guys were up for the occasion too. I think Kevon Looney had a career-high 18 rebounds. Jordan Poole was good because he's one of those players who will have reduced time now that Klay is back. But I think he had 14 off the bench and looked pretty confident out there. So that was good to see as well. I think that's it for points made. Anything from Joel Hammer at the moment?
No, too inconsistent for Joel to give us predictions in advance, but sign up because he's doing well.
He certainly is. All right. Thank you so much, D-Ruck. We'll chat to you next week.
All right, guys. I'll talk to you then.
Hey, mate.
All right, that's just about all we've got time for, Hammer. We've been starved of basketball, but looking forward to the next week, hopefully.
Well, we certainly have, and only a couple more days of isolation here, and then we're back into it. And I think the positive, say for the WNBL, and I think the NBL's similar, is that once the teams have got it, I think we'll start getting some momentum and see a whole lot more play, which is what we're excited to, and especially for the athletes. They just want to do what they love doing. So fingers crossed that happens, and big week ahead.
Fingers crossed for sure. All right, thank you guys for watching at home. Thank you to TCL, 2K and Bet with Joel as well. We'll be back next week, hopefully both in the studio.
This is a co-production by News Corp Australia and Closer Sport.